Good morning and welcome, everyone. Welcome to an introduction to Washington State Able Savings Plan. I've got right at 10 o'clock here. Looks like we've got about 80 people online, and I know we are expecting about twice that. So I'll kind of go over a few housekeeping things at the top of the meeting here, at the top of the webinar, and then we will jump into some information. So I've put into the chat a link to the presentation. So if you click on that, you should be able to follow along with us. The presentation might be a little bit different just because I've added some things. I know we asked folks to submit questions through the registration, and so I've tried to address those in the presentation as we go along. But the link in the chat there is to the presentation that's on our website. We've got a team of folks here. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Katie Hatam. I work at the Department of Commerce, Washington State Department of Commerce, and we are the state administrator for the Washington State Able Savings Plan. And I have the privilege of presenting this information to you today, but I've got some folks from my team online here as well. So Nikki is going to be helping us out in the background with some technical things. So will Zach, if you have any questions, Zach will be monitoring the chat and might be able to answer some questions. I'm going to try to focus on the presentation. And then we've got Daniel here, who was actually with our plan manager, Bestwell. He will be present next week in the how-to webinar, and we'll be providing more information about how to open and manage a Washington Able account. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. I'll pop in the chat here. I know some more folks have joined us in the last minute or two, so I'll pop the link in the chat for the presentation again. And I believe I'm sharing my screen here. You should be able to see the welcome slide here. And we've got introduce myself and our team here. I want to add a quick disclaimer here before we get started that this is an informational webinar. We don't have the ability, we can't provide any advice, financial or otherwise, about your situation or the ABLE plan, but we'll be providing a lot of information here for you today. And also, I noticed in the registration, we have a lot of people from all over the state. We've got both individuals and family members or caregivers. We've got folks from nonprofit organizations and state and local government agencies. We've got some tribal representatives here, attorneys, financial advisors. We've got all sorts of folks here. So this webinar is really intended to be have information that's available for all of you. So welcome and appreciate you being here and learning more about Washington Able. Keep putting the link to the presentation in the chat for folks who have joined us. Okay, so starting out kind of high level for those of you who may be new to Able, what is Able? It's an account that is a result kind of federal legislation. We have state legislation here in Washington, but it started at the federal level. So back in December 2014, they passed the Stephen Beck Jr. Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, which then prompted states across the country to open state plans. So an ABLE account is a tax-advantaged account that allows you to live, or allows people who are living with a disability to save or invest money to pay for either current expenses or future expenses. And it also eliminates the $2,000 asset limit and spend down issues. So people who may be trying to stay under a $2,000 resource limit, any funds that are in an ABLE account are exempt from being counted as an asset or a resource. So that will allow, that's pretty much what an ABLE account does. It allows you to be able to save money without it impacting your benefits. There are disability categories. Lots of different disability categories that are eligible for ABLE. I've got a few listed here, so it could be mental health, physical, intellectual, or developmental, but there's a whole list of them. And what we typically say is that as long as you are entitled to receive SSI or SSDI, then you're more than likely eligible for ABLE. But if you think you have an eligible disability, then a qualification from a physician or a psychologist will be sufficient as well. An ABLE account allows you to contribute up to $19,000. This is in 2025, so the amount kind of has increased over the years. So $19,000 a year without it impacting your eligibility for means-tested programs. And able to work individuals can add an additional amount up to $15,060 without spending down current assets. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a future slide, but that is a combined amount of over $34,000. And then you can contribute up to $1,000 into your ABLE account before your SSI benefits are suspended. They won't be terminated. They'll be suspended until that balance drops back down below 100,000. And then you can contribute a lifetime balance of 500,000 into your ABLE account, your Washington ABLE account. And welcome. I know a few more folks have joined us here in the last few minutes. So I'm going to put a link to the presentation in the chat. Also just making a note that the webinar is being recorded. So if you have to jump off early or if you missed something, we will make that available on our website in a few weeks. So who's eligible for an ABLE account? This is really, anybody can open an account at any age. I'll say that. I know we got some questions in the registration about when can people open an account? You can open an account at any age. However, the disability had to have started before the age of 26. So that's the first criteria. The next criteria is that you are either eligible, as I had mentioned before, like entitled to receive SSI or SSDI benefits based on a blindness or disability, or you can self-certify that you have a qualifying disability diagnosis from a physician or a psychiatrist. If you have documentation to demonstrate that, that's great. We don't require that you upload any documents when you open an account, but it's really good to have something like that on hand. And if you don't have something like that on hand, I've got a link here in the slides to our physician form that'll allow people to, you can take that to your doctor, have them kind of sign it, and then you just keep that for your files. I'll say for a lot of the kind of opening process, and Daniel will go into more detail about this next week, but there's not documentation required. We just really recommend that people keep documents on hand in the event the account is ever reviewed. At the moment, we aren't hearing that either the IRS or Social Security Administration is reviewing ABLE accounts, but it is something just to keep in mind and have on hand for the future. I do want to make a note that age of onset right now is before the age of 26, but starting next year, so January of 2026, the age of onset is increasing to 46, which will really allow people whose disability began between the ages of 26 and 45 to be eligible for ABLE accounts. So got another 7 months or so, and then that will open up a little bit more broadly. So I know, as I mentioned before, we've got lots of folks on the call today. We've got probably beneficiaries, people who are living with a disability or their family. We've got probably somebody from all these different categories. If you're here to learn about ABLE, you can either open an account for the beneficiary, or if you're the beneficiary, you can open the account yourself. So this is who can open an account. Obviously, if the person with the disability is able to manage the account on their own, great, they can open it and they can manage it. If they're a minor, or if they're unable to manage the account on their own, or they just don't want to, maybe they want a friend or a caregiver or somebody else on this list to manage the account for them, then that's fine too. We call this a hierarchy list, primarily because the people who are at the top of the list have a higher legal hierarchy kind of authority to open an account, and then it goes down from there. So if you're, let's say you're a grandparent who's on this call learning about the account for a child or grandchild, you just want to make sure that there isn't somebody on the list higher than you that could open an account. And this, again, we call it a hierarchy list. So if you're not aware of anybody, there's a checkbox that you check when you open the account that says that you self-certify that you're eligible, that you're authorized to open the account. I also want to kind of point out here, we have the ability for organizations who are managing accounts from multiple people to open one account where they can manage multiple accounts at one time. And so if you go to our website and click on that menu icon at the top, the menu will open up and there's a page there for organizational ALRs. And I think I've got a link to that here. I've got to move it around all my windows here. So give me just a minute. And I'll put this in the chat for you all. I apologize, I didn't point out, there should be, I'm not seeing it on my end, so might not have enabled it. There should be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, but if you are not seeing that on your end, feel free to pop your questions into the chat. I'm going to try to address some questions that were asked during the registration process as I go through. But if we have questions that are in the chat, we will get to those at the end of the presentation, and appreciate the patience there. Okay, and I apologize, I've got multiple screens open here and I want to make sure I can see everything. So on to the next screen here. I'm going to go over some common ABLE exemptions. So I know a lot of folks have at least one, maybe multiple benefits that they are trying to manage. And so I'll go over a few of the common ones here, starting at the top with Medicaid. So there's typically no balance limit if you're receiving Medicaid, no balance limit to remain eligible there. However, for the purposes of an ABLE account, they will not count the following things as income: contributions that are made to the account by a person other than the beneficiary, funds that are distributed from the account, and earnings that are generated by the account. They'll also exclude ABLE accounts and money withdrawn from the account as a resource, as long as the withdrawal is used for qualified expenses. Keep in mind, Medicaid will not reduce your income by the amount that you contribute to an ABLE account. There are some additional provisions, so be sure to click on the WAC here, Washington Administrative Code. There's a link here in the slides. It'll go through that. A good thing is to just click, hit Control F to find what you're looking for in the page, and it'll be that. I do want to point out one thing that I know I've come across recently with folks is that if you are receiving like cash gifts from friends or family, and you're putting, they're giving you a check and you're putting that directly into your account or your regular savings or checking account, that could count as a resource for you. And so I'm going to point out a little bit further into the presentation, we have a gifting page so folks can contribute directly to your ABLE account, and then that way you can bypass those cash gifts from being counted as an asset. Unfortunately, I think they assumed that, I've heard that they assume that any cash gifts will go towards clothing or shelter, and they'll be counted as a resource. So that's one way to kind of support not losing eligibility for Medicaid when you get a cash gift. For DSHS, there's a couple of links here, but overall, generally what you need to know is they won't count ABLE accounts as resources for the purpose of SNAP or TANF. DCYF will not count ABLE accounts as income for the purposes of seasonal childcare. So any withdrawals that you take out of an ABLE account will not be counted as income. The SSA will exclude some contributions made to an ABLE account as income, as well as earnings made in the account and withdrawals made for eligible expenses. They'll exclude the balance of the account as resources, again, as I said, up to $100,000. They may suspend your benefits when you get to 100,000, but then you'll be eligible again when your balance drops back down below that. And then again, there's a link here to the SSA forms that will go into more detail. Lastly, and I know we had some questions about how ABLE interacts with housing. So there's a link to the HUD pages here, but in general, they don't count ABLE accounts as income or assets for a number of housing programs. For instance, I know Section 8 was utilized by many people here in Washington. Lots of links, lots of information there, and there's more resources at the end of the presentation that can go into some of those things a little bit more deeply. This slide here is just showing a quick snapshot of how many accounts have opened across the states since 2018, which is when the ABLE program was launched. So we have, I think as of now, this was as of March 31st, but we have over 5,700 accounts now and over $63 million in assets. So you can see that a lot of people are using these accounts. A lot of people are saving money. The average account balance right now in the Washington ABLE program is around $11,000. That's a lot of money for people to be able to save, and that's much more than $2,000. So you can see people are using the account, people are benefiting from the account. So just kind of showing this slide to let you know that if you're thinking about it, if you've been on the fence for a while, you're not alone. There's a lot of people who are utilizing these accounts and getting benefit from them. And this slide I thought was a great slide to show that, again, you can be any age to open an account. So along the bottom here, we've got everyone from ages 0 up to over 92. You can open an account at any age as long as that disability began before the age of 26. And of course, we have a lot of folks who open accounts, or a lot of parents or grandparents, caregivers that open accounts for their youth, their children or grandchildren around those transition years, just because it's a good way to kind of have them start out their adulthood with some money in savings. So again, open an account at any time. So I know we had some great questions around investment options. So I'm going to kind of go over, there's really 4 options when you go to open an account, and we'll go into a little bit more of this in the how-to webinar next week. But there's 4 options. One of them is a cash option. I'll detail on that on the next slide. The other 3 are investment options. So these are investing in the stock market, and it's a combination of both stocks and bonds. So conservative is more bonds than stocks. Bonds tend to be a little less risky. Stocks, again, based on the stock market. So conservative option is what people might choose if they want to limit their risk, but they also limit their earnings. So it's low risk, but low earnings potential. And these are kind of designed for short-term investment periods. We also have the moderate option, which is 50-50 bonds and stocks. We consider this a medium risk, but also medium earning potential, and designed for that medium investment period. And then we've got the aggressive option, which is 80% stocks, 20% bonds, and is designed for people who are looking for a higher earning potential, but there is a higher risk that goes along with that. And this is for people who are looking long-term. So great way to do that if you know you're opening an account for a child or a youth, and the money is going to sit in there for a while. Making a note too, I know I haven't been answering questions in the chat. There is a Q&A section if you want to put some questions in there. I know we've got Daniel answering some questions in the Q&A. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to try to address questions as I go along, but we'll definitely have a time at the end of the presentation to go over some questions. So here's that 4th option, the cash option. So we kind of refer to this as people, if you consider yourself as a saver more than an investor. The cash option is really popular, and I've got a couple in advance here that demonstrate that a lot of people put their money in the cash option. It has a really great interest rate right now, just because the interest rates have been so high. So it's been around, it's right around 4% right now. It was up as high as 5% in the last year. But the cash option is really great. It's FDIC insured. This is something a lot of people are familiar with and comfortable with. I understand a lot of people who may be representative payees might choose the cash option just because they've been directed to choose the lowest risk option. So this is just a popular option for many people because of that. And then this next page, I'm just I put this in here to show you the historical performance of those three other options are. So the conservative, moderate, and aggressive. It also right now has the current rate of the cash option. But this way you can see this. This is on our website, kind of down in the footer. There's a link to the historical performance. And you can kind of see how the plan has performed since inception or, over the last few years. And this slide here just kind of shows you how people are choosing their investment options. So again, about roughly, it's been around 55 to 60% of people are choosing the cash option. So this gray area down here is the number or percentage of people who have their investments in or their assets in the cash option. And then next is the conservative option, and here in black, moderate in green, and aggressive in blue. So kind of an even distribution among the investments, but cash option does really well there. So some people want to know what the accounts cost when they first open an account. So there's no enrollment fee. You can open an account with as minimum or as little as $25 to start the account. There is an annual $35 maintenance fee if your balance is below $35. It won't take you negative. That's assessed quarterly. I think it's an odd number. It's $8.75, something like that a quarter, but it won't take you negative if you're below that. But that kind of goes to pay for the account in the background and in the platform and everything. There's investment fees as well, which are on those three investment options that I pointed out earlier. And there's some other miscellaneous fees depending on how you use your account. So if you order paper checks, there's a fee for that. If you wanted paper statements as opposed to electronic statements, there's a fee for that. But the account costs are designed to be pretty low so that folks can save their money. So once you open an account, there are several ways you can contribute to it. I'll point out again that $19,000 annual limit applies regardless of the type of contribution that you're making to your account. And some people wonder where we get that amount, that $19,000 amount. It's based on the annual gift tax exemption that's set by the IRS. So we don't really have any control over that. That's something that's set at the federal level, and it changes yearly based on what that gift tax exemption amount is. So when you open an account, just keep in mind that funds may be held between 5 to 15 business days, depending on the type of contribution that's being made before they're available. So just kind of think about that when you're making contributions. So here's the 4 ways you can make a contribution. The first and most popular way is just to connect a bank account to your account. So when you first sign up for an account, and it'll ask you if you want to link an external account. So it could be your personal checking or savings, or it could be for the beneficiary or a parent or whoever it may be, however you're making those transfers over to the ABLE account. So that's one way to do that. Another popular way is through rollovers. And I'm saying here from other 529 accounts. So an ABLE savings account is considered a 529A account. That is just a number that's an IRS tax code. But many of you may have heard of college savings accounts. Those are also called 529 accounts. So they both fall under the same tax code, and you can make transfers from one 529A, so one ABLE savings account to another ABLE savings account, or you can make a transfer from a college 529 account to an ABLE savings account. It doesn't go the other way. You can't make a transfer from an ABLE account or a rollover from an ABLE account to a college savings account. But it does allow for folks who, again, parents or grandparents, caregivers who maybe opened a college savings account for their child when they were really young, And as they got older, realized maybe they aren't going to be able to use those funds. So you can transfer those funds from your college savings account over to your the ABLE account. And then I put in here previous ABLE accounts. So if you're moving from one state to another, that's another common rollover that people will do, is to roll over from the state they just moved from. If they're moving into Washington ABLE, they'll roll it over into Washington ABLE. So that's another way to make a contribution. A third and also popular way is through gift contributions. Everyone, when they first open an account, is provided a gifting page. So you open your account, it's already there. You can go in there. You can kind of set some limits in there if you want. But then you grab the link and you share it with friends and family, and anyone can contribute to the ABLE account. And so that's another great way. I always kind of let people know, if you do that option, it's a fabulous way to get contributions to your ABLE account. Just keep in mind, if you also are receiving SSI, or if you're getting contributions in any other way, just kind of plan that out for the year and make sure that you don't reach that $19,000 limit before the end of the year, so that you have a place to put your SSI payments or whatever other payments you may be getting in throughout the year. And then a fourth way to make contributions to your ABLE account is through direct deposits. So this is currently, it's an either or, so you can either set up direct deposits directly from your Social Security payments or from paychecks from your employment. So if you're getting SSI, you can set those up, but if you also have a job, you wouldn't be able to do both of them. But that's another popular way to do contributions. So next we'll move into Able to Work. And Able to Work is kind of an added benefit for beneficiaries who are working and earning employment income. So this allows them to save an additional $15,060 per year. This actually should say 2025. So this $15,060 is the new limit for 2025. So that allows you to save a combined total of the standard contribution limit of $19,000 plus the Able to Work contribution limit of $15,060 for a total of $34,060 a year. Now this is eligible to the beneficiary only if they are not already contributing to a defined contribution plan with their employer. So if they're doing that and that's how they prefer to invest their money or save for retirement, that's totally fine. If the beneficiary wants to start saving to their ABLE account, they can do that in the next calendar year. So what we usually recommend is, if you're already doing that, keep doing it through the end of 2025, and then switch over to making contributions to your ABLE account in the new year. And then payroll direct deposits, as I mentioned in the last slide, if you are earning employment income, you can get direct deposits set up from your employer. And then a bonus at the moment, at least through the end of this year, any contributions that are made to your ABLE account will also count as for the can be used to apply for the IRS Savers Credit when you file your taxes next year. There's a link there with more information. Okay, we get lots of questions about how they can, how folks can use their account, and I'm gonna, oh, sorry, I skipped ahead on my slide, I skipped ahead there. So withdrawals, before we get to the types of expenses you can use, here's withdrawals. So there's no limit to the number of withdrawals that you can make from an ABLE account. Although there's a dollar amount limit, the $19,000 that you can contribute to your account, you can withdraw as many times as you want and as much as you want out of your account, as up to your balance there. Earnings and withdrawals are tax-free as long as they are used for qualified disability expenses, which I'll get into on the next slide. That's a technical term that the IRS has made up, but I will share more about that. So withdrawals, keep in mind that withdrawals that you take out cannot be recontributed to your ABLE account. So if you took out $1,000 because you wanted to buy, maybe a special assistive device or something, but then you ended up not buying it, you can't just recontribute that back to your ABLE account. You can put it back into your ABLE account, but it will count against your your annual maximum contribution limit. So just, be mindful of when you're making transfers about whether or not you can, you have plans for those funds and that you're going to be able to use them within the near future. So I've got some types of withdrawals listed here. So we've, again, transfer to your bank account versus electronic funds transfer. You can transfer to a Visa prepaid debit card, which you can sign up for, and I'll talk about that in a few slides from now, but that's another option a lot of people use. You can order a paper check. There is a fee on that, but that's an option some people use as well. And I put a little screenshot in here. I'm not going to go into details about this, but where you would make withdrawals from your ABLE account is all on your account under this transfers tab here, and then they'll be listed out there. I think one of the questions that we got through registration is regarding bill pay. And there is a bill pay feature. If you go under transfers and withdrawals, there's a bill pay option there via check. If you have an account and you don't, and this doesn't look familiar, you should see the Washington State ABLE Savings Plan logo. It should say Washington State ABLE Savings Plan with your name and account number here. If you're not seeing this, it is possible that you have an account with another state that offers a national plan, which is totally fine. There's a lot of people or a lot of states that have national plans that allow non-residents of their state to open an account. But just be mindful of that. There's sometimes they offer things like state credits, but you might not be eligible for those if you're not a resident of those states. So just something to keep in mind there. And if for some reason you open an account in another state and you want to transfer it to Washington ABLE, I've got a customer service number at the end of the slides here that you can call, and they can support you in making that rollover from one account to another. So those are pretty much the ways you can make withdrawals from the account. And we'll go into a lot more depth about this, about what it looks like and how to do it next week in the how-to webinar. But right now, qualified disability expenses. Again, this is a technical term from the IRS. They're called QDEs. So pretty much withdrawals can be made for any expense that helps improve the health, the independence, and the quality of life of the beneficiary. That is really broad. It's meant to be broad. These were written so that you as the beneficiary or as the caretaker of the beneficiary can decide for yourself what that means for you. There's 10 categories on here. So we've got basic living expenses, which include things like grocery shopping or, buying clothing, going to a convenience store, going out to eat with friends or going to the movies or things like that. Those are, some examples of things that you might put under basic living expenses. Housing, however you're paying for housing. Transportation, this could include bus fare, taxis, things, airline flights. So really broad category. Education. So for those of you, again, who might have a college savings account and want to transfer the funds into an ABLE to support somebody who more broadly, but still want to maybe take some college classes, ABLE can pay for education as well. Assistive technology, as I mentioned before, so wheelchairs or, devices on vehicles that support with transportation or whatever. Employment training, personal support services, legal fees for funeral and burial. So these you can use funds out of this account even after the beneficiary passes away. Funds can be used out of the ABLE account for those fees. It'll be for health and wellness and financial management. So again, if you think about it, almost anything that you can think of that you might need to support a person with a disability in their day-to-day living can be put into one of these categories. Our recommendation is if you have any doubts, keep the receipts, keep some stuff on hand to demonstrate and justify the purpose and reason for making the purchase. But they're really meant to be broad. I'll mention it again here. We we have not heard and are not aware of the IRS or the Social Security Department closely monitoring these accounts. They're really meant to benefit people living with disabilities so that they can save money and pay for the things that they need to pay for to live their lives. So that's a little bit on that. So here's that prepaid debit card I was mentioning. So it's offered through TrueLink, and the card for the beneficiary or for the account holder is $1.25 per month to maintain. You can load anywhere from $10 all the way up to $20,000 onto the account or onto the card. The transactions are tracked online. So it's really nice if you have disability expenses that you're tracking for somebody like a member of the household, and you want to keep those separate from other household expenses. Having this card makes it really helpful to do that. There are no transaction fees on the card. You can get multiple cards per account. So we have a lot of people who either have youth who maybe they want to give a little bit of money to so they can go to the movies or go hang out with their friends, or they have people who they want to make sure that there's a little bit more security around how the funds are being used. So you can have multiple cards. You can have one card that you give to the beneficiary for them to use as they want. And then you can have another card that maybe you're using to pay for bills or buy, purchase, large items for their health or wellness. The funds on the card are FDIC insured. So a couple things to keep in mind is that once a transfer is made from the ABLE account onto the prepaid card, it is considered an expense, and it could be counted as assets or resources. So just something to keep in mind if you do make a transfer to the prepaid card. We've got a lot of people who do maybe a weekly transfer, a monthly transfer for a certain dollar amount that they know they're going to spend down in that month. So just keep that in mind. And then also the card cannot be used for cash at ATMs. Here's some categories of people who are interested in how people are using their prepaid cards. We've got, shopping, groceries, restaurant. On this end, you can see these are items that people are maybe doing, purchasing weekly, and spending lower dollar amounts on. And then you've got people who are doing auto repair and paying for their monthly utilities out of their accounts. So that's more like monthly, but they're a little bit higher dollar amounts. So there's a range of things that people use their prepaid card for. So some things to consider before opening an account or while opening your account is there can only be one ABLE account at a time per beneficiary. So again, if you already have an account, you're moving to another state, or you open a national plan and you want to have a state plan, just keep that in mind. You'll have to go through that rollover process. There's not all of the plans are managed by the same plan manager as well. So again, we've got Daniel with Bestwell on the line with us on the webinar with us today. Bestwell supports about half the states, maybe throughout the country, but a lot of other ones don't. So if you're moving from an account plan manager who isn't supported by Bestwell into a Bestwell plan, like into Washington ABLE, they might not recognize that you already have an account. So just keep that in mind when you're making the transfer. If you do have more than one account, the IRS will count the first ABLE account that was opened as the actual ABLE account. So if you are trying to transfer, just make sure that gets done in a timely manner. They give you, I think, up to 60 days to make that rollover. So again, our customer service line can support with any rollers that you need to make it either into or out of Washington ABLE. Another thing to consider is if you hold on to the money from one calendar month to the next, then things like housing expenditures or non-qualified expenditures could count as resources. So, just kind of think about the transfers you're making and plan that out a little bit. Any non-qualified disability expenditures could incur a 10% penalty, and then taxes would be owed on the expenditure amount. So again, if you're not sure if it's a non-qualified or qualified disability expense, then keep your receipts, have justification. If you can demonstrate that it's for the benefit, the health, wellness, quality of life of the beneficiary, then it would be considered a qualified disability expense. When the beneficiary passes away, the funds can be used, as I mentioned before, to pay for funeral or burial expenses. The funds can also be transferred to a qualifying sibling successor beneficiary. It must be a sibling at the moment. That's what the regulations are. But if you have, multiple children with disabilities, then you can transfer funds from one able account to the other child. And if a successor beneficiary is not named, then the funds will be passed to the beneficiary's estate. One thing to keep in mind at the moment is that Medicaid could potentially recover ABLE funds from the beneficiary's estate. That's what the situation is now. I know that there's kind of some movement and hope at the federal level to have any funds that are in an ABLE account be exempt from Medicaid recovery, but that has not passed at the moment. Okay, so I'm putting this slide in here. It's kind of part of my normal introduction to ABLE slide, but it's just a quick slide where it shows you where to go to open an account. So if you go to our website, click on that menu icon in the upper right, it'll drop down some other options there, and there's an open account link. And then on the next screen, you click on the Let's Go. Again, Bestwell is our plan manager. So they're the folks on the other end of the line when you call the customer service number. They support the platform. So if you see Bestwell there, it's still Washington ABLE Savings. You click on that Let's Go button and it'll start the process. We're not going to go into that detail right now. But again, as I've mentioned, there's a how-to webinar that we're going to be hosting next week. And Daniel, who's on the call with us today, and has been answering many of your questions in the Q&A. Thank you, Daniel. He will be leading that webinar for us next week, with lots of information about how to open an account, how to navigate the account portal, how to make a contribution and a withdrawal, create a gifting page, and sign up, show you how to start the process of signing up for a prepaid card. And there is a link to register. I'm going to pop that into the chat here for you all. If you want to click on that and register for next week, it'll be at the same time. So 10 to 11 a.m. Next Wednesday, May 14th. So we hope to see you all there. And one more thing I want to go over before we wrap up and get to questions, and I'm going to do this kind of high level. I know there's many people who either have a special needs trust or have kind of inquired about that. And I'm not an attorney. I can't offer specifics on special needs trusts, but I do want to share a little bit about the Developmental Disabilities Endowment Trust Fund, which is a pooled special needs trust that is administered by the state of Washington. It's kind of the other program that I oversee. And a lot of people use these two accounts like kind of hand in hand. They complement each other really well. So I'll kind of tell you how they are similar to each other and how they are different from each other. So just like ABLE, the DDETF allows people with disabilities and their family members to save for disability-related expenses, either that you're needing now or into the future. The funds that are deposited into the DDETF are excluded from many state and federal means-tested benefit programs. The funds must be used in the benefit or the interest of the beneficiary, and they can be used for many qualified disability expenses, with the exception of basic living expenses and housing costs. But that's, where ABLE can come in and support. So how the two programs differ from each other is that, unlike ABLE, the DDETF is specific to beneficiaries with developmental or intellectual disabilities. So essentially, if you are eligible for receiving DDA services within the state of Washington, you would be eligible for a DDETF. The DDETF does require the condition to have occurred prior to age 18, rather than 26 as it is for ABLE. The DDETF will not pay for those basic living expenses, as I mentioned, or housing costs if the beneficiary is collecting SSI, because that's what the SSI payments are intended to be used for. The DDETF does have higher fees due to the trust management activities. That is a special needs trust, but it is still much lower than most other trust options available. So, obviously, if your family needs a special needs trust that's not the DDETF, go that route. But for many people who may, where income may be a barrier to opening a special needs trust, the DDETF is a really great option for a lot of people. The earnings can potentially be taxed on the DDETF, so just check with your financial advisor, your tax advisor around that. Third-party contributions to a DDETF are exempt from Medicaid recovery. So unlike ABLE, where we can't guarantee that they'll be exempt from Medicaid recovery, they are exempt. Third-party contributions are exempt from Medicaid recovery when deposited into the DDETF. Now, first-party contributions, so the beneficiary's own income or benefits that they're receiving if they're deposited into the DDETF, those are not exempt from Medicaid recovery. They're still could be subject to Medicaid recovery. But the DDETF has no annual limit to contributions and no maximum balance limit. So right now, for folks who might use the two options, a DDETF is really great to open if you receive a large settlement or inheritance or something that is beyond the ABLE contribution limits. Opening a DDETF account or another special needs trust if you're not eligible for the DDETF. And then you can then make transfers from that special needs trust over to an ABLE account. And that's a really great way that they kind of complement each other. Yeah, so that is a little bit about DDETF and hopefully answer some questions about other special needs trusts. That's pretty much the end of the presentation here. I've got a whole page of additional resources here. I'm not going to go into detail on these, but the links are available when on the slides if you want to check those out. And then I've also got at the very last slide on the slide deck in the presentation here is my contact information here at Commerce, our website. This is our customer service line, which is dedicated to Washington ABLE. So if you call between 9 and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you'll be able to speak with the person. They do have translation options available as well. So if you are working with somebody whose English isn't their first language, there's lots of translation options available. We've also got a Facebook page and a YouTube page with lots of great videos on it. There's also an email list. If you want to get on our regular email list, you can sign up for that. We've got two email lists. One that comes from Commerce, from me here at Commerce, and then we've got another one that comes from our marketing partners, and we send out a newsletter quarterly with them. I'm going to throw kind of a bunch of links into the chat, so that folks have a lot of links that I've already shared, but link to the website, the resources page of our website, where you'll find lots of things like our brochure and a fact sheet, a link to this presentation, a couple ways to sign up for communications from us, and then again, how to register for that account, the webinar that we're going to do next week. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see more folks, and I can see all the windows that I have open here. And then I know that Daniel has been answering Q&A as we've gone along, but I also want to make sure that I address some of the things that you all asked in your registration. So sorry I had to move things around a little bit here. We've got about 10 more minutes left for Q&A. Daniel, I try to keep an eye on the chat there, and I see the Q&A now. Do you know if you've addressed any of the questions that have come up in the chat?
I'm sorry, Katie, can you say that one more time?
I was just curious if the questions in the chat, before we go over to Q&A, if the questions in the chat had already been addressed.
Yeah, so for the questions that are coming through are questions I can answer through in the chat. I think we have 7 left. So if there are any questions you'd received before the presentation, feel free to go through those, and then maybe if we have a little bit of extra time, we can pick one that we can answer live.
Okay. Great. The one in the chat that I see at the top here is it says to clarify then for eligibility, you have to be diagnosed before age 26 and one or the other of the other two options. So yes, the diagnosis has to have happened before the age of 26. And then you have to demonstrate some that you have a qualifying disability. So that could either be that you are entitled to SSI or SSDI benefits, or it could be that you have like a diagnosis from a physician or a psychiatrist.
One clarifying remark on that, Katie, that Daniel pointed out to Julie was it's the diagnosis doesn't need to happen before age 26. It's the onset.
Correct. Yep. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. So, yes, thank you. That is the clarifying thing. Next question, it says, between the numbers 100,000 per account or per year before SSI is suspended. So $100,000 for the balance of the account. You can contribute up to $19,000 per year into your account. 100,000 is the balance that once your account reaches that amount, you can't, or your SSI benefits may be suspended. They won't be terminated. So when it drops back down below that, you can continue to receive your SSI benefits. And then the 500,000 is the maximum balance of the ABLE account itself. So, if you aren't receiving SSI and you aren't concerned about going over 100,000, you can contribute and have your balance go to 500,000 before you won't be able to contribute anymore. I did get the question in the registration about the savings bonds. Those must be cashed before you put them into an ABLE account. You can't put savings bonds into an ABLE account, but that contributions page of the presentation goes over the different ways you can make the contributions. So savings bonds, just, kind of cash those at your regular bank, and then you can transfer the funds over to an ABLE account. The government affiliation with the Washington ABLE. So ABLE itself is federally regulated. The legislation was passed back in 2016. Each state was then, given the opportunity to open their own program. And most states have. We've got, I think, just 4 states that have not yet opened an ABLE plan. We launched ours in 2018. So Washington ABLE was launched in 2018, and we administer the program. You'll see that a lot of other ABLE programs are administered out of the Treasurer's office, but in Washington State, we got it out of the Department of Commerce. So we're just the ones that make sure that the program is functioning, running. We work with contractors to make sure that it's accessible and working optimally for all account holders. Okay, I see. As a parent, if I gift money monthly and try to get to the max over 10 years and my daughter dies, Medicaid can take the money or exempt from recovery. Just want to clarify. That is unfortunately the case right now. What I say is that we cannot guarantee that funds in an ABLE account will be protected or exempt from Medicaid recovery. We have not heard of many cases where the ABLE accounts are being subjected to Medicaid recovery, but they also are not exempt. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you know that if you're starting an account for your daughter and you're not going to be using those funds right away, maybe a special needs trust would be a better option, a better way to go in the short term, just until you're building that balance up. And then when she comes of age and she starts using the funds herself, then, an ABLE account is a good way to kind of start directing those funds so they're more easily accessible. Everyone's situation is a little bit different, so just keep that in mind. Yes, Daniel pointed out to me, our account portal, which we'll share more about this in the how-to next week. The account portal has just been made available in multiple languages as well. So I mentioned earlier, if you call the call center, there's lots of languages available there, and the account portal itself is, I'm not going to even remember all the languages, but I know that Spanish and Russian are among some of the top ones there. So people who English is not their first language, if they prefer to engage with the account portal in a different language, we're making more and more of those available. Okay, so I heard advice to put first-party money into an ABLE, but third-party money into a special needs trust. So that may be, if you're getting advice to that effect, that's, maybe specific to your circumstance. Again, it is something that we, it's case by case, but if you know that you're not going to be using the funds right away, then that's a good kind of setup to go with. If you're going to be using the funds regularly, I know some people they put the money into their ABLE account and then they're using those funds every month, in which case it may not be an issue. So it's kind of dependent on your situation. Those are all of the questions that I saw in the chat. Daniel, you said you had a few questions left on the Q&A. Do we want to address any of those online, or are you able to answer those?
There's one question I think might be helpful to answer live. I've seen this come through a few times now. Questions about bonds. This is related to the investment option. Maybe Katie, you can answer. Does Washington ABLE accept savings bonds? I've answered that in the chat a few times, but thought it'd be helpful to just clarify.
Yeah, and I think I just answered that one, but I'll repeat again that we don't, the ABLE account does not accept savings bonds. So you want to make sure that you get those cashed with a regular bank, a banking institution, and then you can transfer the funds into the ABLE account.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm also looking through the questions that came through the registration pages to see if there are any other questions that weren't addressed during the presentation. One thing I may not have mentioned, but if I did, I'll just re-clarify it, that an ABLE account, funds that are deposited into an ABLE account cannot lower your income. Your income is your income, whether it's made through employment or, benefits or whatever that may be. An ABLE account cannot lower what is considered to be your income. It can lower what is considered to be your countable assets or resources, depending on the benefit. So putting those funds into an ABLE account does reduce your assets or resources, but not your income. Let's see. One person asks, who needs to know about an ABLE account? Honestly, if you are receiving benefits from a state or federal government institution, let them know you have an ABLE account. It's more and more people, more agencies and departments are learning about ABLE accounts and how their particular benefits interact with ABLE accounts. I did provide a few links in the presentation on that resources page. Also, I think it's like slide 5 or 6, that common ABLE exemptions. So they may not be familiar with exactly how their benefits interact with ABLE, but let them know you have an ABLE account. However, since the funds in the account are considered exempt from being counted as an asset or resource, then that number, the amount that's in your ABLE account, should not be used to calculate your countable assets and resources. But it's perfectly fine to let them know that you have an account. Another thing to note is that we do report to the Social Security Administration on a monthly basis information about your account. So they kind of already have an idea, if you have an ABLE account and that you're using them. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through the registration questions here. Before we end, I know we're right at the end here. So just checking to see if there's any other questions. I did get another question about, said, can an ABLE account be used for SSI back pay so beneficiaries aren't over resource limit? So if I'm understanding the correct question correctly, back pay that like is owed to the beneficiary. So the answer absolutely there is absolutely yes. Put the funds into the ABLE account so that they, that they're not counted as a resource. Let's see. I think that is all of the questions that I saw. And Daniel, it sounds like you also answered a bunch of questions in the Q&A. Is there anything else? I know we're a little bit over time here, but is there anything else that people need before we wrap up the webinar today? Okay. I see that there is a question not answered here. I'm going to open up the Q&A here. Thank you all as I've navigated all the various screens. There may be, I will say, for the sake of time, if there's any questions that are specific to like how to open an account or manage your account, we might opt to save those for next week's webinar, for the how-to webinar. So May I see your question? What does housing expenditures are considered resources? If the guardian pays $2,005 for room and board and utilities in a month, the beneficiary would be considered having $2,005 plus resources that month and making him or her not eligible to all sorts of benefits. My understanding is that if a housing expenditures are paid in the same month that they are transferred from your ABLE account to like a regular checking account, then they should not be counted as resources. The tricky part is when you're transferring from 1 month and then they're remaining in your account the next month. So if your rent is due on the 1st and you make the transfer on the 25th of the prior month, that may be where you need to be a little bit more mindful of that. Daniel, do you have any additional information on that question?
No, what you just described is exactly the case.
Okay. Yeah, we've had some people where that's the case. Usually rent is due on the 1st of the month, even if you have a little bit of a time to get it in. We just recommend being in communication with your landlord and asking if you can have the payment be due by the 5th or the 10th, whatever it may work. Okay, next question here I see here is I have a client who just signed up for an account. She said she called and inquired about depositing a SIL extended foster care check for over $6,000 and was told she has to mail it in. Is there a way that she can deposit the check online? So all accounts are opened online and managed online. We do occasionally get, have people who receive a check and they don't want to put it into their regular banking account, or they may not have a regular banking account. There is a way to mail it in. If you go to our WashingtonStateAble.com website, there's a forms page and there is a contribution form that you can mail in with the check. Unfortunately, if you have a physical check, that's the only way to get it deposited into your ABLE account is through that contribution form. Otherwise, deposit it into a regular account and then transfer the funds. And again, just be mindful of the resource limit within the same month. So if you're going to do a transaction like that, do it within the same month. Okay. I see your comment in the chat, May. My email is on the presentation slide, and I'll put it in the chat here again so that that's available. Folks can email me at any time with questions. Okay. Another question, who would be the third party that can contribute without the money being considered for repayment of Medicaid? Would that be like a family member, not a parent? So really, any third party contributor, could be a parent, a grandparent, a friend. Some people post a link to their gifting page on their social media page and it gets shared around and they get contributions from people they don't even know. So third party truly means anybody other than the beneficiary. So next question, does it make any difference if the balance goes over 100,000 because of earnings, interest, as opposed to contributions? Daniel, it looks like you're answering that question, which is great because I was going to defer to you on that one.
Yeah, I can also just answer this one live, just to say that they are two separate buckets. The contribution coming in caps you at what the maximum is for that year, compared to if you've maxed out your contributions, or close to the max of the contributions for that year, but your account is not yet at 100,000, and what you earn puts your account at 100,000. That's the value of your account, which is different from the contributions you've made into the account, which would put you over. And currently max is 19,000. I don't know if there's a future where you'd be able to put high dollar amounts like $100,000 in 1 year, but it's two completely separate buckets.
So the $100,000 limit is only includes earnings and interest from previous years then? Is that kind of like at the end of each year count towards the full balance, or is it only ever contributions?
It would be contributions and what's accrued over the lifetime of the account within any given period of time. So
Okay.
yeah, 19,000, if I put $19,000 today, and that puts me at 100,000. My contribution is 19,000, but my total account value is 100,000. And based on what depending on what I'm invested in, the value of my account could go down or up, based on what I'm invested in the market. So mix of both.
Okay. If that answer didn't answer your question, please let us know. You can type that into the Q&A again. Next question, if I have both ABLE and 529, does SSA consider the total of both in the $100,000 limit? I cannot speak on behalf of what the SSA considers. But I will say this, they're two separate accounts. I don't know if there's a limit. I don't believe there's a limit on a 529 savings account. So I don't think that they would consider the combination of both of them. They do both fall under the same IRS tax code. 529 is college savings, 529A is the ABLE accounts. But when it comes to the Social Security kind of suspending benefits after that $100,000, my understanding is that it's just limited to the ABLE account. So you could have more than that in your college savings account and it not be penalized for that. Next question is, how do I get SSA started for my son? He's 18 with significant autism. Unfortunately, I am not the best person to answer that question. I know that we've probably got several folks on the call on the webinar today who are better suited to answer that question. I think if you're living in the state of Washington, start with maybe the DDA, so the Developmental Disabilities Administration. Getting a disability diagnosis and getting qualified for DDA services there, and that may be a good. Yes, I see folks answering the question. Thank you. Contact SSA and file an application. Talk to your local SSA office. So, yeah. Thank you to all the experts on the line today who can support with answering those questions. Okay, last question I see here is regarding the SSA direct deposit question. My daughter gets an SSDI payment and an SSDAC payment. Any idea if I can designate one of the payments? Daniel, do you have more information about how those Social Security Administration deposits are made? I know I don't know all the intricacies of that.
Yeah, and I was going to respond to this one asking for a little bit of clarification. When they say designate one of the payments, I'm assuming which of these two can they pick to go into their Washington Able account? And the answer to that question, if that's the question being asked, it would be the SSDI payment. That's what you can set up as a direct deposit payment into your Washington Able account. I'm not familiar with what SSDAC payment is, but that's not one of the options built into the feature we currently offer.
So yeah, the DAC, a disabled adult child.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. My understanding is when people go to set up that Social Security Administration direct deposit, there's some interaction with the Social Security Administration page as well that to kind of get all that set up. So that maybe that's an option available once they get started.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe a question to ask when they begin this process with the Social Security Administration. You know, if you're visiting an office or if you're speaking with someone on the phone, maybe you can get a little bit more information on that. But I can say 100% we would accept an SSDI direct payment coming from the Social Security Administration for your account.
Awesome. Well, I think that is all the questions. If anybody, I'll put it in the chat once again. If anybody has any remaining questions that they didn't get answered or something new comes up, please feel free to email me at that washington.able@commerce.wa.gov, and I will, I'll answer your question or I'll ask Daniel to help me answer your question. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Wednesday, May 14th from 10 to 11 a.m., same place, same time. And Daniel will be leading the conversation that day to show you all how to open and manage an account. So whether you have an account already or not, please show up. If you don't have an account, he'll show you how to open one. If you do have an account, he'll show you how to navigate it. So it's great for everyone. But thank you all for being here today. Thanks for taking time to learn more about Washington Able, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.